It's been 97 days since Melburnians began their second hard lockdown. In that time, the Health Minister quit, and now another government insider's broken ranks. The trusted advisor to Treasury sacrificed his job to warn about the long-term damage of the harsh restrictions. He spoke with us.
They've been cooking up policy on the run.
A former government insider speaks out as Melbourne doctors join the campaign to end what they say is the world's harshest and longest lockdown.
We don't believe there's any medical reason why the lockdown should continue.
We have been shut for 7 months, which equates to 61% of the year so far. I've lost over $1 million.
Karen Austin's business is bleeding.
What's it like seeing your shop like this, completely empty?
Makes me very sad. I try not to cry, actually. It's a 6-year-old business, and I've worked very hard to build it.
Karen moved interstate for family reasons and is about to return home to Melbourne, where she hopes to reopen her Richmond skin and laser clinic.
The only thing the conclusion that I can come to is contact tracing is letting us down.
This is, by the way, a classic case of the government failure on steroids.
Just weeks ago, Anjeev Sablock was a trusted advisor to the Victorian Treasury, a senior economist with a PhD who dedicated his life to public service.
The whole thing being so arbitrary, I've been against it from day one, let me say that. And I've raised the matter repeatedly within my department, and I've been brushed aside.
So he took to Twitter in what Anjeev describes the very first protest of his life.
And so these are the kind of tweets which are relatively mild. There was no direct attack on Daniel Andrews at that stage. I started calling this a police state. I think that's when the Treasury might have said, hey, this guy is now starting to say something quite bold. Let's ask him to pull down all his posts.
Anjeev was hauled over the coals for his social media posts.
You've been criticizing the government policy. We want you to remove the posts that are both directly critical of the government policy and indirectly critical. I resigned on the spot. I said, I want to go. I need to go and speak about this issue publicly. I need to let the people know that you're doing the wrong thing.
What about the view that if you let this rip, tens of thousands could die?
Well, the opposing view people have absolutely no clue about how good policy is made. They assume that policy people like us are really stupid and that we assume that everything will be allowed to let rip. Did they ever read the pandemic plan of Victoria? Does it say let it rip? Does it say that? Do they even know what they're talking about? Do they know that actual policy is all about protecting the high-risk category? So in this case, the government should have put all possible barricades and barriers, hundreds of millions of dollars poured into the aged care system so that not a single extra person would have died.
Anjeev describes the government's approach as a sledgehammer to kill a swarm of flies.
They started forcing the people without any risk to wear masks and then to bash them up and then to start wasting everybody's time discussing that. And they did not look at that hotel quarantine. They did not do that, right? So what you're saying here is let it rip is the worst, is the sign of the ultimate stupidity. The person who says that is the biggest fool in the world because he doesn't know what he's saying.
Anjeev is no COVID denier. He lives by fundamental economic principles such as risk, even at the shops.
So I actually wear an N95 mask along with a face shield and my disposable gloves. This I've been doing for months on end. In fact, I started wearing masks in February. Good morning. I'm speaking from Ruffy Lake Park, and I've got a question for the Chief Health Officer of Victoria. I took a video of myself walking in an completely empty park and saying, hey, Mr. Sutton, can you please explain to me where is the evidence that I'm going to get a virus or I'm going to pass on a virus in this environment?
Victoria's second wave nightmare began on June 30. A week later, Melbourne was placed under Stage 3 lockdown.
For a period of 6 weeks.
Less than a month on, we moved into a complete shutdown, Stage 4, before the Premier announced his roadmap to recovery.
I want a Christmas that is as close to normal as possible, and this is the only way.
But almost 6 weeks on, there's no end in sight. Anjeev, meanwhile, is causing an almighty headache for the government, using his newfound free time to pen a book.
called the Great Hysteria and the Broken State. This is the biggest hysteria, in my view, in the history of humanity. Nothing like this has ever happened before on a scale and magnitude across the world.
We think we should stop the lockdown and try and get on with some normality in life, being careful about how we relate to other people.
Surgeon Jeff Wells says he's a golf buddy of Daniel Andrews and now part of a growing movement of 500 medical experts demanding the lockdown come to an end.
We don't think there's any scientific basis for the 5-kilometre lockdown. We don't think there's any scientific basis for wearing masks outside.
It's clear the damage from this lockdown will take years, if not decades, to repair. The World Health Organization shocked us all this week when one of its advisors urged governments not to use lockdowns as their primary way of containing the virus.
It is possible to decrease the harm of the virus without significant side effects. We need social distancing, hand washing, masks inside. We need very, very good contact tracing. Now, this has been the case in New South Wales.
After 104 press conferences, Premier Daniel Andrews has become good at brushing aside criticism, which is now coming from high and low.
If they prove to me, if Daniel Andrews can prove to me that confining me in solitary confinement inside some small place will save the human species, but prove to me that's the only thing left for him to do, to confine all of us into solitary confinement, I will do that.
We'll be watching the Victorian Premier this Sunday for an expected easing of restrictions.